recording in progress. And I'm going to just refresh a few times, make sure that this is showing up here. Not yet. It says live on Facebook, and yet, oh, there we are. I can see me. Oh, but it's weird. The camera's on Sarah. Oh no, now it's on me. Okay, good. That's better. It says live on Facebook, and I mute it. Oh, there we are. I can see me. Oh, but it's weird. And then I close this. Okay. Thanks everyone for bearing with me and technology. That's how Ali G says it, and I like it. I like that word, technology. We're going to start by pouring some very steamy hot tea here. Get that on camera so you can see. I was doing a presentation for the ICF, that's the International Coaching Federation. So that's like the body attempting to bring rigor and certification and all that stuff to the coaching world, and someone doing it. And I was doing a presentation, and the lady introducing me had reached out. She'd seen me in another seminar I was doing, and she reached out to me and was like, hey, will you come and speak at our group? And I was like, I'd love to, that'd be super cool. And she asked me for my bio, and I sent it, but then she clearly watched some of my other stuff, because she, as she was introducing me, she started to go into detail on a pair of shoes that I had designed. And then she grilled me on my teapot and whether I had a steaming hot cup of tea. So I was like, I like this woman. She's done her research. Good morning, Mia. Here we go. Just primus sippus. Ooh. Oh, that tea. Let me tell you something about this tea. This is called Paris at night. And I've never drunken tea in Paris because I would rather drink wine while I'm there, but this tea is damn good. Okay. Well, I'm excited for today. We've got an awesome guest for you, the inimitable Sarah Gibbons. I love saying that word, and I love that I didn't mispronounce it. Before we bring her on, I'm going to talk a little bit, as I often do, about whatever's up for me right now. So there's two things. One is I'm on my way out for vacation. Bay and I were originally planning to go down to San Diego for an event. It was going to be the first kind of like mingling, networking event since a year and a half since all of this happened. And very quickly, well, not very quickly, as time went on, hey, America, as time went on, we were like, this doesn't feel like a good idea. So we canceled our trip to San Diego and instead decided we're going to stay in the country and travel just locally. So we're doing a road trip through the Kootenays, which is the mountain region to the east of the province I live in, British Columbia. And we'll be checking out Banff. For anyone that's heard of Banff, we'll check out Jasper. And tomorrow night, we'll be staying somewhere really kind of cool, which is a place called Three Valley Gap, which is a old like ghost town in an area that was mined, I guess, during the gold rush, would be my guess. And what's cool about that to me, and probably no one else, is that when about 30 years ago, when I was in grade 9, almost 30 years to the day, we stayed in the very same hotel we're staying on a band trip. So I was in band playing my bass clarinet, and we were going across Canada to Edmonton to a place called West Edmonton Mall. And boy, did we have a lot of fun on that trip. So we'll attempt to recreate that kind of fun. Andrew, that's cool. Yeah, there's some beautiful areas and fascinating little history in that part of BC. Where we live, a lot of the cities are separated by quite a lot of space. So the next town, if you like, from kind of the main area of Victoria to go up island would be about a 40-minute drive. In that Kootenays region, because of the gold rush and the early days of logging and what kind of the industry that drove cities being built or villages being built or settlements being built, there was a lot of sort of places which would come into being. They'd pop up based around the industry and how it all worked. So there's a few lakes in this area, big lakes called the Arrow Lakes, that were the primary means of transporting lumber through the province. And so you've got these little cities, not even cities really, they're more like towns or villages, really close together. You can drive like 15 minutes from a village with a population of about 50, and then there's like one with a population of 100, and then you get to the big city, which is a population of 200, and so on and so forth. So super cool area, really neat to visit. Morning, Tommy. Morning, Andrew. Hello, Raphael. What's I'll start by sharing a little bit of what's been going on for me this, I want to change this view actually. Can I get it to, how do I don't want to, well, I guess I'll leave it like this because it looks like it's just showing my camera. I'm going to double check. Yeah, it is. Okay, that's perfect. What's been really live for me is I finished editing Who Do You Think You Are last week. And I find the editing process very intensive, especially where when I write my mission, the stand I bring to myself is darken the page, Adam. So what I mean by that is just get some words on the page and get out of your way. Don't edit it. Don't make it the right words. Don't necessarily even worry about it being coherent. Just put words onto paper. Often, I've been writing for a bit, writing in various flavors for over 20 years now. These days, I can get fairly coherent stuff down. But for a whole book, and a book with the kind of depth and we'll call it like ontological rigor required to pull apart these pieces and to really discern what I'm trying to discern in my writing, sometimes that's not necessarily so coherent. And so I sent this to the editor and he loved the book and went through, and then there were parts where he's like, okay, this chapter, I got really lost on this. And I kind of knew that was coming because as I wrote the piece, I was kind of doing that thing I sometimes do where I'm like, this doesn't feel coherent at all. I'm just going to fucking get these words onto the paper. And hopefully there's like brilliance that springs forward. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes I'll get up in the morning, I'm writing, and I'm literally hating everything I write. And I'm like, get it out of here, publish it, put it on Facebook. And that's like my most popular post. Not so for all of the parts of this book. And so coming back to that and editing it really requires like some rigor on my part. And what I mean by rigor is it requires that I sit with that idea and I really I do the harder work of asking myself, what am I trying to say here? And sometimes I'm like, I don't even think I yet have distinguished how this particular way of being shows up when it's scared. I've talked around it, but I haven't gotten to the heart of it. And then I have to sit down and really think. So it's not just removing words. In some places, I'm like, oh, I kind of stepped over the heart of what needs to be brought forward in this piece. So all that to say, quite an intensive process. And I've been doing that for maybe 2 months now, more or less. And, the way that process looks for me is I sit down, I get my tea, I start to edit, and then I immediately load up Facebook to see if anyone's commented on anything of mine. And then I immediately check my Discord chat with my friends to see if anyone's checked in. And then I go, okay, I come back, I edit a little bit longer. And so it's very, my default in that kind of work is to distract myself because it requires that I really slow down and do what I would call showing my work. So it's not enough for me to just say like brilliant thing and then expect everyone to come. I have to do the harder work of slowing down my own thinking and like connecting, drawing out the dots for everyone, including myself, so that we can follow along and understand how this particular way of being creates this particular kind of fear-based strategy in the world, so on and so forth. So it's required a lot of me holding myself in place, resisting my desire to distract myself, and fighting makes it sound a little like a battle, but like really doing what I would call generating. I have to generate a different way of being from what is most easy and from the way I've learned to kind of show up generally in life. In school, the way this would show up, and I think hopefully you'll find this quite interesting. So I got part of who I am is a lot of brilliance. I could see the answer, but of course, as you know, seeing the answer is not sufficient. We have to be able to derive it and show how we arrived there. And so in math, I would get frustrated by that and I would get bored and I would distract myself and want to go somewhere else. I'm like, I already know the answer. Why do I have to show this? The reason we have to show this is so that other people can come along with us. That's a leadership quality for brilliance. It's a leadership breakthrough, really. Building a bridge so that we can bring other people along instead of just shouting at them that they're stupid and should trust us. Although I am tempted to do that sometimes. And so the interesting thing about that is people with that quality can sometimes be diagnosed or labeled as prone to distraction or even having attention deficit. And what's actually happening is they're just up against that aspect of their essence, their beautiful brilliance, and where it doesn't want to slow down, where it wants to go faster. And why do we have to blah, 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 blah? And then we create this label, and then they start to relate to themselves through that label and all that stuff. So last week I finished editing. Oh, there's one more piece I'll say about that, which is as I'm editing in the morning, it's all my energy is going to that. So I've not been writing. And hey, April, nice to see you. Hey, Maximilian, thanks for being here. Get some Forge members here. I like it. And so I've not been writing. That's required most of my energy. And I really have missed it. And there's a lot of stuff that's been brewing while I've just not been either able or willing or wanting to create the space to sit down and start doing that. And so having finished that editing and sent it off to the proofreader now, there's been a font of just a fountain of stuff that I've wanted to write about. And the piece I'm going to talk about fairly briefly is this 10-part series I'm currently writing called The Energetic Laws of Leadership. And what these energetic laws are a set of laws that help us understand the way something we know happens in the world, but don't understand quite why. I'm going to try to do a better job of explaining that. But these laws kind of capture the essence of what we would call karma and things like that. Like we all know that story. Well, maybe you don't, but there's a parable. Hey, Carrie, and thank you. I'm glad you like those. There's this parable where a man comes to a city. He's at the city gate and there's a homeless person sitting outside, a wise homeless person. And he says to the homeless person, hey, how are the people in this city? And the homeless person says, how did you find the people in the city you came from? And the person says, oh, I found them delightful. They were super caring, really loving and generous. And the homeless person says, oh, you will find these people to be the same. And then you can probably already see where this is going. Another person comes up and says, hey, how are the people in the city? And he says, well, how did you find the people in the previous city? The guy says, oh, they were liars and cheats and they backstabbed and they were all in it for themselves. And the wise homeless person says, well, you will find the people of this city to be very much the same. So that parable has the feeling of wisdom to it. We kind of are like, yeah, I can kind of, that makes sense. But why does it make sense? And how does that turn out to be the case? Is it just some cosmic arbiter of justice that makes that happen and is like, you have a shitty attitude, so I'm going to populate this city with people that'll be shitty to you? Why is it that that's the way it goes? And a lot of this stuff kind of tends to just be a bit mystical, and it sits esoterically in this space where we're left to just trust it until we don't want to, or until that's kind of hard to do. And then we're like, fuck it. So what we're doing with these energetic laws of leadership is we're taking those and then walking you through it in such a way that you can really understand, oh, snap, that's how that goes. That's why that's not just some neat sounding parable. There's actual real truth. And here's how it goes. That energy goes out into the world and then comes back and returns to me that way. So it's a really fun piece to be writing. I'm really enjoying it. And I think in the mid to longer term, there's about 68 different books that I want to be writing, but that is one of them. I think like I'll write these 9 laws out. And then what I'm envisioning is a book that kind of has probably 20 chapters, 1 introduction, 1 conclusion, 9 chapters where these laws are actually laid out, and then another companion chapter to each of those where we see our favorite coach, Jonathan, modeling these laws, actually working with someone, coaching them, supporting them, developing their leadership through the lens of that particular law. So you can kind of see how they work and then, great, now I understand that, but how do I coach someone with that? How do I develop someone's leadership inside the context of this law? How do I use this for the development of leadership? So that's been so nourishing to, 1, to like share those, and 2, to get a little more feedback, to have people be like, I love this, or to share what they see from it, or even just to get a like or a heart. And it's easy to dismiss that part of my desire, that element, as purely my ego. with the bullshit saying like, I shouldn't need that. I should just do stuff because I love it, and I shouldn't need any appreciation at all. And I say, bull roar to that. That's right. I declare bull roar or bullshirt. It's forking stupid to hold it that way, I think, because we need recognition. We need acknowledgement of ourselves. I want to know that I'm making a positive impact. I want to know that the expression of myself on this planet makes a difference for you. And so it's really important that I acknowledge, not just from my ego, though it does stroke my ego, that getting appreciation that way matters to me. And that's another reason editing has been so challenging, is because I'm doing that without anyone around. I can't put it into the world, really, or at least I find it a lot harder to do so. And so I don't get that same feedback. And so I have to be really responsible for that. I have to ask people for acknowledgement directly, because I know that's important to me. I have to ask my wife for that, or I have to find other ways to sort of get that need met, rather than trying to pretend or convince myself that I just don't need that because I'm a strong man, whatever nonsense that is. Maximilian, crazy. This is why I was so pulled towards you, Adam, when I first got to know you. It's being spoken to explicitly now. What is the this there, Maximilian? I love that you wrote that. I want to know, because that's cool for me. So what is it that had you pulled towards me? And M. Gwyn, I think, do you go by Molly? I heard someone refer to you as that. Do you go as Molly or do you go as Gwyn? Just so I know how to speak you there. And it really does my heart well to hear that you love those laws, that they're making a difference for you. They're making a difference for me too. As neat as the process for writing them is really cool, because I don't already know the answer. I can just feel the truth of it. And then, hey, Sharifat, welcome. And then I can, from there, kind of, okay, I feel the truth. How is this the case? And the way my writing process looks is I'm like, okay, let's start with a person. Let's give them a quality. Now, how would I imagine that person would show up in the world? Knowing what I do from my background coaching and leading, what's going to happen? And what have I observed happen? And blah, blah, blah. And then that is the writing process. I'm literally following along with Lucy or Gladys or Jorge or whoever the person in question is as they walk through this stuff. So I'm thrilled that that's having a positive impact, and so glad to be getting to write again. Andrew saying, somehow that discussion about needing to be acknowledged, I wanted to let you know that I finally started to listening to Get the Love You Want. Wow, what an amazing resource so far. It definitely puts the leadership back into my hands for our marriage. Get the Love You Want is a book by Harville Hendrix. I always mess up his name. It's a phenomenal book, and I highly recommend it. Harville Hendrix is a very deep man. He is the founder, I believe, of Imago, the Imago approach to therapy and relationship, which is truly foundational and absolutely will make a tremendous difference in your life and in your love and your relationship. And so that's awesome, Andrew, and just such a great book. Let's put it in the comments here just so people have it. I think isn't it Getting the Love You Want, Andrew? I think that's it, by Harville Hendrix. And if I get it wrong, oh well. Get out of here, Facebook. There you go. Okay, well, let me talk about our guest, and then we'll bring her on. So Sarah, you got to sit tight while I just talk about you. Sarah and I initially met back when I was leading the leadership team with a friend and colleague of mine, Kendra Kunov, for a man named Rich Litvin's intensive. So he's running these big intensives, about 150 coaches. And then there's a leadership team of maybe 30 coaches. And I was bringing leadership to that team. I was leading them. And creating quite a shift from the way that team had been initially. That team was initially created as a stand for service. So the stand for service would be like, I'm here to serve you as a leader. What do you need? How do I serve you? Blah, blah, blah. And my stand for that team was that we were a stand for leadership, developing breakthroughs by taking on our own. So the model, really stepping into that model of leadership, is doing my work first. I'm showing up here, not already complete, but looking for my breakthrough to take that on so as to then cause the breakthrough for the people I'm leading, which created a bit of some upheaval we had people that were used to the old way that didn't like that, because now instead of them getting to kind of be a part of the cool club and have it sorted and then help other people get it sorted, instead we were sort of being like, what is there for you to take on? Like, where are you blocked? Where are you stopped? And when people are used to this idea of this kind of default story about leadership or belief that exists in the world, which is really like, get there as the cool kid and then you help other people. When we take that away from them and make it like, no, the work's over here with you, that's a bit confronting, even and especially for coaches. I say especially because a lot of coaches have the, like, from their training can kind of get left in this place like, oh, totally do all the work. I've done my work and it feels so good. And I'm glad that I took that work on, and now let me help others. So that can just start to show up. Sarah put her hand up to join this leadership team. I knew her somewhat, and both Kendra and I looked at the way she'd applied and we're like, we really want to feel more of Sarah's heart. She filled out her application. It was really well spoken and articulated and all of it was great. And we're like, no from here. We want to feel more of your passion. We want to feel more of you. And Sarah, I don't know, she'll share in a sec how this was, but she took some time and then she came back and she really enrolled us in having her on the team. So not great, you've done the stuff, you jumped through the hoops, let's get you on here, but like, hey, really like have us see what's in it for us to be a yes for you. Not because you have to prove to us your worth, but because we want to develop your ability to enroll people in possibility as a leader. And we're going to start developing that ability before you're even on the leadership team. So the challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to begin being a leader today, right now, before we're a yes to you. So Sarah, let's get your camera on. Let's get your mic on. I've been talking enough about you. I wanted to start. It'd be cool to hear about that process. I don't know if you even, do you remember that?
Of course I remember it. Like it was yesterday. I got a pit in my stomach when you just brought that up.
So share with us your, like, what was your experience going through that? How was that? What all showed up for you?
Oh my God. I got that email and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. This is, the next step. And I was like, does that say no? And so I do what any person does that feels rejected, is I call someone who will listen to me bash Kendra and Adam, because clearly they are wrong and horrible people. So I did that. And once I got over
Did they agree with you?
At first.
Yeah.
And then cool. She said, send me the email. Let me see the email. And I'll never forget it. She goes, I kind of like this Adam guy. It's like me. You don't even know him. And, until you just said that though, Adam, that you wanted to feel more of my heart, I don't think I was actually clear on why it was a no. But when I looked back on it, what I did notice was I did the thing that I've spent a lot of time working on, and I'm still working on, as you know, of trying to get it right. And so when I looked back and read it, it was like, yeah, it looks good, but like, what's it all for? And so, I mean, that was the start of it. And then, you mentioned the confronting piece. I mean, that didn't stop there. I mean, I remember we had then a whole nother conversation in front of the group at large. That was.
Tell us about that one.
Well, I was cruising along in the weekend, serving and working on leadership and watching other people get breakthroughs. And I happen to like fashion. So I was, wearing a cool shirt, as I am today. And I just remember, you looked over and actually you didn't say anything at first. I think I was sitting like this. And then you mimicked how I was sitting. And I was like, what's he doing? And then he said, when you're like this, and you started to give me really direct feedback on how I was showing up in the being underneath it. And it was super confronting and edgy. And I, when your tears start to well up, that you're like trying to hold them back because you've got.
I do.
Yeah, I had that experience.
I remember that well. And then I think we had you practice owning a little more of your, like, if I remember, the body language you adopted was a little more like, it was really great. That was cool. was really courageous too. Like I remember that being, well, I remember that whole process really being very new for everyone. They're like, what is this guy doing? This isn't
Yes.
the way we do stuff. And I remember also, I'm not going to talk about it because it involves another person, but there was a few
Yeah.
times where, we created some messes, created
Mm-hmm.
some waves for people because we don't, here's my take on it, and I'd love to hear
Mm-hmm.
yours.
Mm-hmm.
We think we know what a leadership conversation is going to look like. And we usually have an idea like, yeah, they're going to like point to the thing I know I need to do. And then they're going to push me to stop doing that thing. And then I'm going to stop doing that thing. And it's going to be fucking sweet. And then I'll be level 3 leader. And then we'll come back and
Mm-hmm.
we'll repeat that. And then, it's just going to be great. What do you like? Does that sound kind of like how you've experienced other people or yourself in that kind of conversation?
Yeah, completely. And it's almost that out of body experience where you realize no one's really listening to each other. They're just waiting to talk.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, that was a completely different experience. I mean, I think the thing, if I go back to that experience of a new way of leadership, I mean, it was not only confronting to be the person that it was coming at, but it was also
Yes.
uncomfortable to watch other people that it was being done to. There was just discomfort on every angle.
Yes.
And at the same time, looking at the facilitators and going, God, I don't know if I could do that. Like, how's he doing that? Or how's she doing that? So, I mean, the whole thing was out of the norm. It was a very new experience, not how I'd ever experienced leadership conversations.
I'm just going to fix my lighting. There we go. That's a bit better.
That's better.
Get some brightness in here.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the part about being uncomfortable when other people were on the hot seat, because I think that's really like there's something really valuable for us to just be in a conversation about, like what I would almost call the cost of standing for leadership. So just can you describe or elaborate on that a bit?
Riff for a second. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it. I'm in the Forge group with you now, and so I see this once a week. I think there's this humanity to humanity feeling that occurs when you see someone else perhaps experiencing vulnerability, and then I notice for me, I start to take on like, oh, are they feeling embarrassed? Are they being pushed too much? And so I filter it through my own experience and this human to human need to want to save someone and make sure that they aren't feeling comfortable at all. It's like the same example of, if someone comes to me and they're really upset, and it's someone maybe I don't have a relationship with, I might feel uncomfortable at first because I don't know them. I don't have that level of connection, but it's just that like, oh, are they okay? And wanting to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah. The flip side or the other version of this that I see is where if I'm not okay, let's say, I'm just trying to come up with an example. Well, I'll use a simple one. If I'm not okay, like if I'm uncomfortable having the spotlight on me, being in the center of attention, I'll have developed, one, I'll have feelings about that. And two, I'll develop a whole bunch of strategies to get that spotlight the fuck off me. And then if I see someone else in the spotlight, sort of like the leader is like, hey, let's turn our attention here. Let's address how you're showing up as a leader. If we do that, then all of my feelings about how I feel having the spotlight on, I'm going to empathetically feel over there with that other person. I'm going to project my feelings about my discomfort onto them, and I'm going to try to save them or rescue them from it, because that's going to allow me to not feel empathetically that level of discomfort. What do you ever notice this show up in your work? Like when you're working with people addressing their leadership, do you find that shows up?
I mean, absolutely. I think it definitely does. And then the other place that I notice I will go to is, and I'll catch myself, is thinking that I know what's best for someone.
Mm,
And it's this weird sort of like thought that I'll have as I'm coaching, and then I'll have to, I'll feel it starting to happen.
yeah.
And then I'll have to kind of catch myself and go, well, who am I to know? And
Right.
that it's really easy to point to examples like in parenting, but like,
Yeah.
who am I to know what's best for you?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely experienced it.
I think that's one of the most challenging parts of being a coach and developing leadership, kind of very overlappy, is like you, I can see a lot for people. I can see a lot available. I can see a lot of breakthroughs that may or may not be there. And my coach often reminds me, thank goodness for her, Adam, you can see a way, you can see a breakthrough, but you tend to relate to it as the way or the breakthrough. And that then takes away your client's own process, their own trust. And it takes away your ability to trust anything, because you've made yourself the sole determinant. You're God dictating what this person's path is, energetically, if not verbally, and through what you're trying to get them through. And this might be a little bit of a shift, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I notice that happens a lot with very empathetic people, is they have an experience, an emotional experience, and believe they are feeling something for the other person. I'm feeling what the other person's not necessarily feeling. And sometimes that's spot on and accurate, which is amazing and such a gift if we can survive it, not be destroyed by the pain or whatever we're feeling. The challenge is that that's not always the case. And as soon as we start to relate to it as, I always feel what they're feeling, now it's the same as me with a breakthrough. The person's like, would you get off of me? That's not what I hear you insisting that's the case, but it's not. You ever come across that or have any thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%. So I'm very empathetic. And so I often feel things for other people and then filter it through. Of course, I know how they're feeling. You and I had a conversation about this recently. And so it's one of the things I've also really been working on, of making sure I'm keeping my focus on their experience. But one of the phrases that always stands out to me that I tell myself throughout the day quite a bit is reminding myself to give people the dignity of their own process.
I love that.
And as a mother of 3 boys, I often think I know what's right. And sometimes it's really painful to watch my boys make the same mistake over and over. And then I have to realize, like, they have their curriculum in life, and I'm here to grow their leadership and facilitate them. But at the end of the day, I have to give them the dignity of their own process. That's sort of like natural consequences too. And so I think it's the same when you're when you're coaching. I have to remind myself, like, my goal is to see someone and to get someone, and to create the space for their own experience, and not to crowd it with what I think it should be or what I know it to be.
Yes. I can't remember who said this recently to me. I might have read it in a book, but they were talking about how it's not a good idea to share your wildest dreams with people who want to protect you from having your heart broken. And people they want to protect us from having our heart broken because they care about us and they love us, and they're present to how much it hurts to have your heart broken. And the path of parent and teacher, and leader and coach, let me say it a little differently or more rigorously, the path that is possible, that is available. We don't have to go down this path, but the path that's there to walk if we choose is really like a path of being willing to have our heart shattered time and time again as we watch, knowing full well that that's a hot stove that the child or the client or whoever's going to put their hand on, and also knowing I can't stop this. Like, I have to allow, as you beautifully put it, the dignity of their process, because that's how we learn. And we don't want them to hurt themselves. And of course, as a parent, it's even harder because there's this murky barrier where it's like, okay, let them fall off the bike, but not off the ravine. And
Exactly.
yeah, where is the
Yeah.
line and how do I
Yeah.
know? And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
Uh, no, I mean, you always articulate things uh, so beautifully. No, I think
That's why I
it's,
had you on, is to say that.
yes, yes. Well, of course, your brilliance is shining through. I think it's why when, coach a lot of people in groups. And one of the
Hmm.
things I really notice in it, and even though I've set the container up of, hey, we're not giving advice. Certainly if I'm working with someone, you can ask them questions and get their permission to, support them. But I think it's also interesting noticing how we as humans are so quick to want to give people advice,
Yes.
and then just how quickly that can derail someone's process and the experience of them being in. And it's even with experienced coaches, we see it. So it's an interesting science experiment.
It's fascinating. And so, I mean, for me, one of the reasons I learned to never share any of the struggles I was having was because I was going to get told I needed to get over it. Like I needed not so much get over it, but like, great, but you need to do this job, right? Like I'm sorry you're sad, you need to do your homework, that kind of thing. And two, I was going to get told what to do. And I hated that. And it's the funny thing about advice is that um, it's meant lovingly, but I'm just feeling this out of my head, but I would almost go as far as to say it's inherently disempowering, because baked into giving advice is the idea that I know and you don't. I have the answer and you don't. I want to help you get the answer and I'm the one with it and you aren't. And so every time we provide advice, it energetically creates just that little bit of, like, whoop, I'm a little bit above you. I'm one step ahead of you. And then we get into the game of like karmically managing all of that.
Yeah. And don't you think, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, my kids would, like, I do that way too much. But don't you think when we start doing that, then it also then creates all these expectations that are so one-sided?
Say more.
Well, as you were saying that, I was thinking about like giving advice. And the advice usually is like, I'm going back to parenting because we're like 3 weeks into homework, and, I'm like, okay, we got to get the homework done. If we started at 7, it's not really going to get done, and everyone like peters out. So as I say, okay, we got to get the homework done, then there becomes this expectation underneath that I think they feel. And so just the whole experience then feels constricting and combative and tight, which is the opposite of inspiring and motivating and possibility.
Yes.
So I don't know, maybe we just never give advice. I don't know.
Well,
what does that look like?
I love that you brought this, because this exists in parenting and leadership everywhere, which is the tension between like holding a boundary versus forcing someone to do, like creating a container with consequences versus forcing someone to do something. And I can't speak on the level of parenting. I know you can, and please feel free to do so once I talk about this from a different lens. But like often in leadership and even in coaching and people in their life, there's sort of this idea like we don't really want to hold people to the consequences of their actions. And you can hear that sometimes the way people are with boundaries, where they're like, well, I have a boundary, so you should respect that boundary. That's not how a boundary works. It's not their job to respect your boundary. It's your job to hold your boundary and mete out the consequences of someone transgressing it. What happens if someone transgresses your boundary? You stop talking to them or whatever. And that's a funny line, because we want to use a boundary kind of like it's there, it's like a fence, and they're walking by and suddenly the fence hits them in the head and they're like, what the fuck just happened? It's not a weapon. I see that
all the time. It's like I work with a lot of executives, and they're like, God, so-and-so emailed me at 11 o'clock at night and I have a boundary. And
Yes.
I'm like, why are you looking at your phone at 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah. You don't have a
It's on
boundary.
you. You don't have a
Yeah.
boundary, but I mean, it's that sneaky way of not standing in responsibility and
Yes.
passing it off to someone else. But yeah.
Yeah. For me, one of the places, this was a really challenging one for me to learn, because as I learned to be with more of life, I learned to expand myself ontologically. I could be with more. I started to realize, like, wow, there's almost nothing with enough support, work, and commitment that I can't be with. Whatever life brings me, I can over time learn to be with it. We could go into like extreme situations like the Holocaust, but that's not really going to serve this conversation. And then that became the trap for me, which was like, I should just be able to be with anything. So if my friend is showing up and yelling at me or something, I can be with this. This is a hurt human being. That's why they're being hurtful. I have the greater consciousness, whatever, the work behind me, the support. I can be with this and let them move through this, and then blah, blah, blah. And over time, I kind of realized, like, that's not working for me. And in fact, what's next for me is not to be with more of what we might even just call abusiveness, not from malice, but still, even if they're doing it from fear, it's still abusive. It's not for me to learn to be with more of that. Now what's next for me is just to create a boundary and be like, no, you don't get to do that with me. There's nothing wrong with you. I don't need you to change how you show up in life, but I want you to know if you do that, I'm leaving. Not ending our friendship, although if you keep doing that, I probably will, but that's what's going to happen. And that was so edgy and challenging for me to take on, because the belief I'd constructed was, Adam, you can be with everything, and therefore be with everything. That's the greatest expression of who you are on this planet. And it's just fascinating to me, like, oh, wow, my ego grabbed a hold of that empowering belief and made it the new thing that kept me imprisoned. Anything along those lines that sort of been in your field as you've taken on your work or moved through this stuff?
Oh man, that's a big question. Well, I think what I was hearing in that was just how we swing from either or. And that's one of the things I really have to work on, that I am been committed to working on in my leadership of, well, it doesn't have to be either or. I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, you and I were just talking this morning about, when we distinguish something and what it looks like, we were talking about the example of being in social self versus leader self. And I had this aha when you were saying this of like, oh, well, if I'm showing up in social self, then, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, social self, meaning that you aren't in leadership, you're more in a way of being that is people pleasing and dimming your light and really not in service to your leader self.
Not going to rock the boat, going to make sure everyone likes me. What do you need me to be for this interaction? Yeah.
So this idea that, okay, well, if I'm going to show up in social self, then I wouldn't say yes to that. There's just this very either or, black and white paradigm. And I know for me, that's very much something that I can operate in, and it feels so limiting. And so one of the things that I've been taking on is, what does it look like to put an and in something? And I think we see this a lot with, particularly, I see it with my female clients, who are mothers, and I'm really driven and I'm a mom, but they feel this, social pressure of that it has to be an either or.
What are the two things they put on either side of that either or?
So it's, I'm either running a company and I'm a badass and I'm really driven, or I'm an engaged mother, but that there isn't room for there to be both. And so there's different places in my life where I've had to look at and go, oh, where am I holding things at an either or? Especially because in this example, we're told, we can't do everything.
Yeah.
We're constantly, that's like hitting us over the head. Well, what does that even mean? Like your everything isn't my everything. So I just find I'm really, one of the things I'm really working on in my leadership is, where am I just in this right, wrong paradigm either or. And luckily, you know, my husband and my kids give me lots of opportunity to reflect back. It doesn't have to be that or that. Like there's
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, that comes up for me in my own work, but I see it with my clients
Yeah.
daily.
It's really hard when the either or is, well, it almost always is, I guess, like reflected to us through society. So like
Very.
women have gotten that programming, and frankly, there's lots of evidence. You don't have to
Mhm.
look far for it, right? Like men get promoted when women don't because women are going to get pregnant and leave, and then we have a
Mhm.
year-long gap and all of that stuff, which then reinforces the belief, which then determines our actions, which, you know, creates more of the same. And that stuff is so hard for us to move through, and it really,
Yeah.
I think, really requires I don't know what the right set of words were, like either an act of trust or a almost like a suspension of belief, like a willingness, like when you hear the first line of a joke and someone's like, okay, a duck walks in the bar. For the joke to work, you got to be willing to let go of like ducks don't go into bars. That's dumb. And they never talk to bartenders. That that's easy when we're talking about the context of a joke, but like in the context of our life, it's really hard for us to set down, oh, what if there was something else possible aside from it
Mhm.
being one or the other?
Mhm.
And I find for me, I'm always caught off guard by the, like kind of the novelty every time of like how pervasive that belief is, how sticky it
Mhm.
is. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
I've done a lot of this work now. I'll be able to easily distinguish the belief and set it aside. And then there I am in a conversation with my coach. No, you don't understand, Rachel. I need to solve this. No, Adam. Well, actually, she would never say no, Adam. She's like, huh, tell me more about that. I'm like, ah,
I know. That's when you
fuck.
know they've got you.
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing
Yeah.
about that one that gets me is they're not giving me anything to resist. You know, like
Mhm.
my survival mechanism is very effective at drawing people into an argument, and then I'll destroy them in the argument. I'll lawyer them. And she's just, all right, great. Let's take that belief and see where it leads. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I'm married to someone with that talent.
with the lawyer
Let me
attorney
draw you
skill.
in, and then I'm
Uh-huh.
just gonna like, and John will watch this replay, but he's great. I always tell him you should have been an attorney.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so I remember um when I took my coach training, it was a few years after, but I was talking to like the one of the earlier coaches I had, and she'd been there for my very first year when I was being trained, and they were really, you know, supporting me in starting to see some of this stuff. And she was saying, oh, I can, do you want to know how you were in your first year? And I was like, yeah, let's hear it. And she said, okay, so the way you showed up, Adam, was basically you'd put your hand up, and then it'd be like, can you explain what you said to me again so I can then explain to you why you're wrong? Do you get it? Like, so people
Yeah.
would say something, I'd be like, hold on, I'd ask for an explanation, but what was really happening was like, tell me that again so I can fully get it and then explain why it's not accurate, which is like, that's not a winnable game. And I'm certainly not going to get any transformation. And of course, people were infuriating with me because they just
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, we're going to let you sit with that, Adam. What I need to know.
But is brilliance one of your essence qualities, Adam? Yeah,
Yep.
I would think it would be. And I think that's also why it's so helpful. This is one of the things I'm really learning is like to really get, like when you are working with someone, you really know what their essence is, like who their way of being is, irrelevant of all the
Yes.
stuff that happens on top. Then it's like, oh, Adam's just showing up in an overexpression. But it's
Yes.
much harder when you don't know that about someone, and it's, you know, someone that
Yeah.
you've only
Because
interacted with
then
a few times.
all there's left to relate to them as is this annoying tendency. We can't see below the surface. Oh, there's a beautiful soul here that's confronted. And from their
Yes.
confrontation, they're doing the
Yeah.
pattern they've learned to do everywhere in their
Yeah.
life, always for the last 30 years. Of course they're showing up this way.
Yeah.
It would be stupid, I guess, to
Mm-hmm.
expect anything other than that at this point. They know not what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's a version of that that you can see for yourself?
Oh gosh, I was just thinking about my essence qualities. I have brilliance as well, and so one of the under expressions of that is well, there's two. There's an under expression that can get lazy, like where I'm just like, it'll look like I'm so overwhelmed, but it's because I don't feel like doing anything. Like I
Right.
know I have a lot to do. So there's that under expression, but then my over expression of brilliance comes across as my way is the highway. I know it all.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I love my husband, and he's a watcher, and he's going to laugh about this, but we bicker over like how to load the dishwasher. And I know he's going to say, but Sarah, when you do it, it doesn't get all the clean away. So I hear him in there redoing the dishwasher after I've
I
done
love it.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? We've been together for like 20 years, but I'm like, no, it's my way. And I have to, even though I do all this work and I facilitate it, I'm still consciously being like, oh, I'm doing that thing again, where I'm thinking that it's my way or the highway, and then I'm looking at him going, he's doing the same thing, and I'm forgetting about his essence quality. He also has brilliance. So yeah, I mean, I'm in it all the time.
Tell us about your two approaches to loading the dishwasher.
Well, he's going to argue with this, but I do rinse everything off, John, contrary to what you might think.
Okay.
And then I stack the plates, and sometimes I put them a little close together.
Okay.
But really, they all come clean. And I do the forks, spoons down.
Okay.
But John rinses everything off. And I think where we differ is he likes a little more space in between things. But if I'm running the dishwasher, I don't want to look over at the sink and see a few extras sitting in it.
I see. So you're like, get him in. And he's like, let orderly.
Wrap a bow around it.
Right.
Move on to the next project.
Here's the thing, Bay and I don't have too much along those lines. I'm like, leave them out. And she's like, they're going in. That's not a big thing for us. But the thing that I'm really grateful we both agree on is putting all the forks in one utensil spot, all the spoons in one, because then when it's time for me to unload them, pull all of the forks out, boom, they all go in the same spot. I don't have to sort. Yeah, so I'm really glad that she's on board for that, because I'm the one that empties the dishwasher, and it makes my life a little easier.
That our 8-year-old does that job and probably would really appreciate them being categorized.
Oh yeah, he's got to enroll you guys in
shape. Yeah.
He's going to get embroiled in this triangle. There's going to be a whole third level of it.
Gus has no idea what's coming this weekend.
Let's talk a little bit about, I'd love for people to get the gift of you sharing a little bit about your experience to the Forge.
Yeah.
So because you're now in your 3rd year and kind of leading our leadership team along with Heather. So I would you can share anything you want, but I'd love to hear kind of like, what was the first year like? How did that differ from the second? What is stuff you notice, anything along the lines that you want to share?
Yeah, great question. My memory is not great because that was 3 years ago.
But, yeah, it goes quick.
It goes quick. When I think back to the first experience of being in the Forge, similar to now, I sort of didn't know more this year I knew what I was getting into, but I would say my first year and my second year wasn't totally aware of what I was getting into. What really stood out to me was... Can
I ask you a question first?
Yeah.
What did you think you were getting into? Like, how were you kind of holding what you were saying yes to?
Well, I'd been in a group, so I've been in one of Rich Lippman's salons before. So I had an experience, salon of group coaching, but I didn't realize how much more confronting and being put on the spot and really walking the talk of you're going to experience your leadership in real time. And I didn't, and it's probably good. I didn't know that's what I was getting into. But it's actually the very thing that I wanted. But because I had witnessed you and Bay's work, I had an idea. I also was drawn to the fact that we are going to be creating projects and working around those projects. And so it was less about, you can make it whatever you want, but that I wasn't going to be just the business of coaching.
Right. Carrie's asking if she should stop watching now.
Oh yeah, Carrie, definitely stop. I will say one of the things that that's been really wonderful is that we talk a lot about a gradient of leadership and facilitating. And I feel like from my first year to the second year, where I became part of this new leadership team that was really being developed, on the fly last year, there still was so much love present. And I really intentionally used that word, that I didn't feel like, I knew whatever was going to be thrown at me, that I was going to be held and supported.
Mm-hmm.
And last year was a huge growth year as far as the experience. I mean, I have a co-pilot in this, Heather, and both of us, gosh, we text in the mornings of, that we would be running the meetings, like, in 2 hours, it's going to be over, we'll be on the other side of it. And every time on the other side, we're like, it was so great, wasn't it? We learned so much. And then it happened again. Just two, we're just going to get through it. But
can I speak briefly to that?
Yes, please, because fill in the blanks.
Yeah, like Bay and I have two teachers we work with in the realm of yogic intimacy, which is another, it's all part of the same, these are all facets on the same diamond that is us as humans. But they were sharing with us, they were saying, we've been in this work for 12 years, and every day we get to have just the most sacred, unbelievable lovemaking with each other from the practice and the art and the yoga that we're doing together. And every day we show up in the morning and are like, I don't want to do this. Every single time, it's just always there. And no matter how far and deep we go, our resistance is going to show up. And so I share that because that's absolutely how leadership is for me. And it's always good for my heart to hear, like, oh, in all of these areas, our edge is our edge every single time.
Yeah, our edge is our edge every single time. Yeah, even though you more to practice it, then the edge just kind of grows.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely feel that. And now I feel it in the third year, even more so. I mean, I feel like, God, I don't want to use the word hard, but just the newness and the level of discomfort is completely different than the level of discomfort that it was last year. I guess the thing that I've noticed for me, that's been an awareness, is that not everyone craves this kind of growth, and that's okay. And there's plenty of people who are totally content with their life and going about the lane that they're in. And I just happen to not be one of those people. I really like that experience of being on my edge, and then what happens on the other side of that, even though it can be really excruciating at times.
I have a belief that on some level, every human being longs for full expression, and which is the heart of leadership ultimately. Mm-hmm. Like, can I be fully expressed and like moving whatever I'm up to forward from that full expression? I really believe every human being longs for that on some level, but there's a whole bunch of stuff on top of that. Reasons why we were trained not to be the way we are, stuff that we learned about the world, stories and beliefs that got us here, but now hold all of that stuff. And as soon as we make it that someone should step into leadership in their full expression, we've taken away their ability to choose it. And so until people can get down to that level, we actually have to give them complete like freedom to not want it. So it's kind of a challenging place for me to hold, because I'm holding both of those things, right? Like not everyone wants it, while at the same time, I believe if everyone was able to see all of what's possible, the human spirit at its core longs for this sort of stuff. And it's okay to not hear that voice, or to simply choose not to take it on. And, that's okay too. And all of that sort of stuff. Mia's just created a new tagline for the Forge, which is the Forge, excruciating. Come and join us.
Put it on a hat, make it real, put it on some merch.
So there's the discomfort, which is absolutely a part of stepping out of our comfort zone, which is a part of leadership. What has had you be a yes to that? Because some people are like, I'm just a yes to really leaning into my edge, but that's not usually enough when it comes really time. So like, what have you created, or what have you gotten out of that discomfort, or has had you kind of lean into it?
Gosh, so much. I mean, I think first and foremost, what had me be a yes is one of my core values is integrity. So I got to walk my talk. If I am asking others to invest in themselves, then, and particularly I run group programs, then I also want to make sure I'm investing in myself, both one-on-one, group, and, other things. So that's the first thing. And that has also taught me, I've really grown my capacity to invest in myself. I mean, John, my husband, who's so on board with this, but when we first started and I was talking about investing 5,000, and now I'm, way north of 30,000 of investing, it's a totally different, just my capacity there. So that in turn has created a lot more self-trust in that area, and like a willingness to be like, hey, this is important to me, as important as putting money in our kids' college funds.
Yeah.
And so that feels really good. And that transfers over into confidence. And then in the tangible world, I have really, since joining the Forge, created a business that ultimately is around what lights me up, which is working with creative people and people who are really committed to making an impact in humanity. So when I first started coaching, I was coaching all sorts of awesome people. I didn't know what I was doing as far as like what I was building, but it's become clear, and I've been able to really be okay with being no to some things and to making space and a yes to others. And so I've got a business that's very full. I have from a
just created a client yesterday, right?
I created a client yesterday, a new corporate client I'm really excited about. If you look at my revenue, even my husband who's like, God, Sarah, like, this is amazing. And I came from a online sales background. So I have for a long time, I'm not driven by money, but I like making money.
Yeah.
And
same.
so, and I have a good relationship with money in that regard.
Yeah.
But to be able to create my own business based on my values, but doing work that I really love, has been really fantastic. And that has completely grown since being in the Forge, particularly because I've learned how to put structure around things and around my what it is that I want. So that's been really awesome. And then I would say the other thing that's come out of the Forge is a greater willingness to try new things. So like each year I started something called Tidal, which was a summit, a one-day summit a couple of years ago. And then COVID happened. So I moved it to online, and not everything that I have launched since being in the Forge has been a success, whatever success means, but just the fact that I have been able to, it goes back to what you said earlier, like express myself more fully and try different things. That feels so good, because I am someone who, even if everything is going hunky-dory and the numbers are there and I've got great people, I cannot do the same thing over and over and over. I get bored very easily. And the Forge has helped me to learn how to express myself in different ways as my desires grow and evolve, but really from a creative standpoint. So, I'm now 3 years into this, and, and also just my skill set. I just don't know where else as a coach. There's so many coach programs, and this is not Adam did not ask me to come on here and tell how much I love the Forge, but I am very privy to all the different coaching programs out there. And the Forge is just incredibly unique when it comes to honing your craft in real time. That we're not talking about leadership. We're experiencing it. We're getting feedback in real time. We're giving feedback, receiving feedback. There's just not anything out there like it. Plus we have a lot of fun and we laugh. So
we keep that part secret.
We
focus on the excruciating aspect and then keep the fun to ourselves. Thanks for sharing all of that. I'm curious, this is kind of a digression. We may come back to the Forge, we may not, but so you just got a new client. When I get a new client, I'm curious what shows up for you. What shows up for me is the part prior to getting on board with the client is kind of cool, because there's no commitment in the space yet, and we're feeling each other out, and I can take some pretty bold swings. Now, this isn't necessarily where coaches begin. Often they're like, I'll do the bold, scary thing after I'm hired.
Okay.
But for me, there's like, all right, I just be whatever there is to be, say whatever there is to say. And once I get hired, it gets a little scary for me because then I know we're going to get more intimate with each other. Like once we have that commitment in place, there's nowhere to go. We're in this. And I also know almost everyone has a way relationship goes, and there's absolutely no reason to believe that this relationship is going to go any differently. In fact, if we're doing our work, it should go exactly the same. It's just that we'll talk about it and distinguish it. So that's often, it's edgy for me every time someone says yes, as it is for my clients. What do you find what's your process look like internally as you're getting to that point with someone?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's definitely evolved than where it was. So I'm just going to speak to my most recent experience. I, similar to you, don't have a problem taking risks before there's a contract in place, because I also know for my people, that's the number one reason why they work with me, is that I'm going to say stuff to them that no one else is probably going to say. In fact, I hired a client a couple of years ago, Patrick O'Neill, great creative director in the world, magnificent. And he was going on and on about Theranos. He was the CMO at Theranos. And I finally
Which is Theranos? That sounds familiar.
Theranos is Elizabeth Holmes' company.
Is that the blood?
Yes.
Oh, that story was fascinating.
Yeah. And
oh my
she's
goodness.
In the news
I wondered why
week.
I recognized his name.
Yeah. So she's in the news this week. So that's why it's a little bit top of mind. Anyway.
Can I just, before you share more, I'm going to put the book, if anyone, this is such a fascinating story. It's called Bad Blood. I listened to that thing on an audio book coming home on a plane, and I could not sleep to save I was just like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. Anyhow, so please, Theranos.
So exactly why, like, if you don't know the story, it's a fascinating story. And so Patrick, we were in enrollment conversations and he's going on and on about this. I had read the book, totally blown it. But I finally looked at him and was like, I am so bored by this conversation. Are you? And he goes, oh my God, I'm so bored. It's just a habit to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I really got right away of like, all right, this is the way I can really serve people. So that's now when I sign up. So then contract comes in, we've got agreement in place. Then I feel this like, oh my God, I got to deliver transformation for them because they're investing in me.
Yeah.
And that's really where I am continually doing the work with my coach, because I have to remind myself 24/7 that the onus is not on me. I am a catalyst.
Yes.
And God's spirit is working through me to support them, but that it is not on me to create this transfer. And that's for me, that's really difficult, because, oh my God, what if they get to the end of 6 months or a year and they don't get the thing that they want, whatever the thing is.
Yes.
So that's really edgy for me after I sign a client.
Yeah. I had a client who, she hired me. She paid a whole bunch of money to work with me for a year, and like spent most of that year basically in resistance to herself, ultimately. Like, and I just kept putting that in front of her and asking her, like, so what do you want to do? I don't want to have to do anything. Okay, great. Where do you want to spend our time? I don't know what to talk about. Yeah, that seems like kind of the consequence of not wanting to do anything. So what should we do from, just keep putting the reins back in her hands, which is friggin' annoying for her. Because it's like, this conversation's crazy. And it's like, well, that's going to be part of your experience if you sit in the world not doing anything. If your commitment is to not do anything, you're going to end up in conversations where nothing happens and the rest of the world's doing stuff. And so, boy, did I bring a lot of this particular client to my coach, because it's very triggering for me. For me, I'm like,
I can relate.
Life is amazing. Coaching is incredible. You've invested all this money and energy and time to like do this. The possibilities all here. And my judgment was, and you're fucking around. You're wasting it. Mm-hmm. That's my judgment. And so I kept bringing that to my coach to get supported, hold it differently, and see, who does this person need me to be? And where I landed was like, this person, in order to create whatever breakthrough was next, needed to invest all of this money into someone and then have that person not push them anywhere. Just be, all right, we're just going to sit here and not do anything. How's this going for you? Well, I feel awkward. Okay, great. And just sit in that conversation after conversation. And yeah, like that was, it took so much from me to not at varying times scream, shout, tell her off, spit judgment down the phone, hang up the phone, be like, fuck it, why are we, all of that stuff. And so people, I think the part that I also want to talk about here that I think you will also agree with is it's easy to sit in that conversation if I turn off everything and then just play video games while she's yapping away or talking about this, because then I don't have to be present with it. I don't have to feel anything. The hard work of coach is to sit in that place with your client and feel everything you're feeling like a totally open human being, and to work yourself out so you can stand for them without putting yourself onto them. And that is time challenging work that will destroy you. I find if you're not getting supported.
I had this week alone probably 3 experiences that speak to that, where I've got one voice going, God, like, come on, Sarah, like ask the right question and get this sorted, or like, God, you haven't been a very good coach and this is what happened. And I mean, just all these voices are like, who does she think she is? Or why is he saying that? And and at the same time, you're standing for this person's possibility. I mean, it's,
and setting aside your advice and your judgment of what they should do. And then we had even one more layer on top of that, which is that the person you're supporting has trained the world to do the very thing that your own judgment wants you to do. So this person has trained the world. I'm going to sit here and do nothing until you kick me enough and make me do something. That way I never have to choose my life. And so it's not just, I just sit here and let them. No, it's I sit here, allow them to be the way they are, and then they work their ass off to make me come in and give them advice and fix them. So it's
just so uncomfortable. I have a client who continues to not do his homework in between sessions. Just, come on. And to sit there and be with that is, and if we are not selling you on wanting to be a coach, I can't imagine.
Well, but I think that's important, because the myth is you'll just go and you'll just go and you'll tell people what to do, and maybe sort of listen with a sympathetic ear, and then their lives will get better. And the truth is, on the other side of all this, the life you get to experience is of a richness of love and expression that you cannot even imagine, or at least I couldn't. I lucked in almost to this. There was some commitment on my part, but I was choosing not from an awareness of what was available, really. And thank God, because this is what I got from all of it. And so it's just the richest, most beautiful, profound profession I can imagine. It's tremendously lucrative if you are committed to your own work and put that in front of getting paid. But the path we must walk is a willingness to have our heart broken, because that's the path to have all of the love you want in the world. A willingness to, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of other, to be betrayed, because that's what's required to have an experience of trust in the world, and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're touching on, Adam. A lot of people don't realize is the experience behind the scenes of what makes what I would say a really profound coach that able to guide leadership. I mean, I live in LA, and before COVID, I would, take lifts here and there. And I cannot tell you how many times I get into a lift and the lift driver's like, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm an executive coach. He's like, oh, me too. And I'm like, trust me, we're not doing the same, like I'm over here like sweating, anyway, point being, so much what I didn't realize when I got into coaching was really doing the work, not so that I could be perfect, but removing the things that are in my way so that I can show up and be this vehicle for transformation for others. And so anyway, I would agree. I got a lot more than what I was bargaining for.
Yeah. Carrie says, I love this. This feels like something I can, brackets, try to do. It totally is, Carrie.
Yes.
And it connects with polarity work, holding the resistance or whatever it is that shows up with an open heart and groundedness.
Yeah.
I've done lots of work in the realm of polarity and continue. And I believe, did you and your husband do some work with John Wineland, our friend John?
Oh, did we? Poor John. I didn't tell him we were getting into, and we showed up. And if you don't know John Weiland's work, it is very vulnerable. So yeah, I've worked with John, of course, in Rich Littman's intensives, but also John and I showed up to a one-off situation. And yeah.
Just John Wineland working with you?
No, it was my John and I, and we showed up to John, and Kendra was also there, and it was
like an intensive they were running.
It was just an evening in LA, and it was a lot of single people, and then John and I. And so they announced that we were going to rotate couples. And I mean, I just sort of got, I heard the doors lock and just started pitting out. I was like, and John's going, "What are we doing?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
Did you not know?
I didn't tell my John anything about John.
What did you enroll him in? Like, what did he sort of?
Well, it was date night, and I said, this is going to help with our intimacy and our vulnerability on every level. Of course, he shot his hand up. I mean, who's going to say no to that?
What a good man.
Get there, and he was actually more comfortable with it than I was. But it was great, and I have since sent clients to that, and that's been a whole other.
Will you share a little bit about? Don't give away any confidentiality, but like what?
Yeah.
Sort of showed up for you, or like what you felt confronted by, or just any more of your experience, because a lot of people I think don't really even understand polarity, first of all, and then what is this embodiment kind of work we're talking about.
So embodiment work, for those of you who aren't familiar with John Wineland, really I look at it as going back to full expression, like not just with words but your whole body. And the theme of the evening was around intimacy. So for example, we were given, all right, you have a minute where you are going to share with your partner, who would you like them to be and to seduce them? And they get to tell you who they want you to be. So like, this is very stereotypical, but like, okay, John, I want you to be a policeman and I'm going to be this. Meanwhile, then you get 60 seconds to act it out. Okay. You're not in like your own room. You're in a room with 30 other people doing the same thing. And then they wanted you to rotate partners because it had nothing to do really with the other person. It's like, so for me, as a 44-year-old woman, being able to stand there and fully embrace who I am and express myself and not give an F about what I'm doing and all of the judgment, I look stupid, I'm going to feel silly. I don't know how to do this.
Over there.
I am not going to be doing
them.
that. I'm not going to be like twerking and doing whatever that is, right? Or, oh, I look too stiff, or I'm not this. I mean, it is the antithesis of what I see how my children are, who they're just like, free and wild.
Yes.
And so it was awesome. And it was horribly painful every second of it.
Yeah.
And I also, as I say this, it's not a one and done thing. It's like, what's my version of that each day as I'm going through life and trying to express myself in writing, in intimacy with John, whatever it may be. But it's something that I have to keep practicing, whether I'm in John Wineland's room or not.
Yeah. Something with our teachers that showed up is they were giving us a practice during our morning practice where we would, for 10 minutes, I would simply ask for what I wanted, and then they would provide that. I want your fingers to trail across my chest. I'm usually naked during this practice as part of it with like a blanket around me. I want your fingers across my chest. I want you to run your fingers across my neck, and then 10 minutes, and then Bay goes for 10 minutes. And what happened was they offered this practice, and I was like, well, what showed up for me was like this real fear. I'm going to ask for something. I'm going to get it. I'm not going to like it. And like, fuck, what do I do then? And that, like, it's fascinating to me how these asanas of our practice can drive so much up as we move through something yogically, where it's just like, wow, there's so much rooted in this idea. Like, what if I ask for what I want and I don't like it? And then I'm stuck with it. I don't want to disappoint my partner because they're giving me what I want. And I can see that thread throughout sex ever since I lost my virginity, like
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
the way through it. And it's remarkable working through that
Mhm.
stuff. And
Mhm.
like, wow, there's some real fear here that I don't need to buy into, but it's here. And
Mhm.
as I work through it, even if I don't need to buy into, it's still going to be there. That's part of working through our fear. And so um, first of all, I so am inspired and love your husband for just
I
being a
know, bless
yes to
him.
that. Like, oh boy, what a great man. And love that it flipped and you were like the uncomfortable, or at
Holy
least
cow.
more uncomfortable than. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know John Wineland, he's a good friend of ours. I did a year of work with him, men's work. He tends to lead a lot of, these days he leads both men's work and I guess we call it women's work.
Mhm. Mhm.
And his primary, I guess we call it modality, would be through embodiment. So
Yes.
what is the essence of what my teacher would call the alpha energy that tends to be more imbued in people that identify as men? And what is the essence of omega energy, which tends to be more imbued in people that identify as
Mm.
women? And how do we embody that quality physically such that when we come with another partner, we can create polarity, the spark that exists
Mhm.
between the gap of those two energies?
Mhm.
Um, so now, like when you suggest something for date night to John, is he like, give me the documents, let me see what all of this entails?
I think now we're just like, we'll do anything just to have time away from responsibility of all of our little
Right.
people. But it was an experience. And I think the thing that I love about it is just, well, that example, as I'm telling the story of just that willingness to even try something,
Yeah.
to put yourself in a situation where, I tend to go into things fairly blindly. It's served me well most of the time, but yeah, I think that's what keeps it spontaneity. It keeps it really fun.
Yeah. I always found so much of, like, I remember we would do something called sacred theater. I think we might have done that at some of the intensives
Yeah.
too, where
Yeah.
you have, you get into a triad, you bring something, and then the two people listen to you and are like, their job is to listen and then give you a practice you're going to perform for 1 minute in front of everyone that will
Uh,
unlock whatever is the block. It may be completely, you may be like, I'm mad at my business partner, and they're going to be like, all right, you're going to, for 1 minute, so one man gave him the practice, you're going to open the room by taking a shit. That was the thing that came to John, and the guy did it beautifully. It was so profound. But I always found those, it's just 1 minute, but for me, oh, such anxiety leading up to it. How do I do it right? Am I going to fuck this up?
am I going to look
Overthink.
stupid?
Yeah. Answer
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. Answer
That's part of
yes.
what'll free me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The embodiment work, I would, if you've never taken any of that on, I think I mean, certainly we probably have scared you all, but I do think it just allows you to go to express a different part of you that there's no way, some of the ways in which I've been able to show up the last couple of years, I'd be able to had I not been doing some of this work.
Yeah. The way our teachers put it is like, well, first of all, the most beautiful thing I think is that all of this so there's no this is better than that. They're all different paths inwards, but along a path we'll get so far, and then we need a different approach, which is what sort
Yes.
of allows, that's why not better or worse, just this is what's going to serve me in this moment. And our teachers talk about moving through things yogically as opposed to like through talk
Mm.
therapy. Sometimes we need to go and work with a therapist through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
so amazing. But then there's other points where it's like, no, you need, like, what's really going to open us up is to open the room by taking a shit. That's going to have us
Mhm.
physically move through something. And I love how all of this stuff leads, it all comes back home. And that's where it's all leading us back to.
Yeah, there's no one right way,
Yeah.
but lots of different ways that also will, I think, at least for me, the more that I explore the different modalities, the more I'm able to feel more of my heart and bring that in. And that
Yes.
ultimately is, where it builds the connection that I'm constantly seeking, with
Yeah.
others, but also with myself.
So where do people find more about you and what are you up to, Sarah?
What am I up to? Let's see, you can go to my website, sarahgibbons.co. Lots of information on
CO,
there.
not com.
CO, not com.
Mm-hmm.
John told me that was quite cool.co, but truthfully, sarahgibbons.com wasn't available. I might need to buy that. So you can go there, find information about me. I have a newsletter that goes out on Tuesdays. It's quite intentional. It's around leadership kicks, and I have a lot of fun. I write that. As far as what I'm up to, I have a program starting in a couple weeks called the Circuit Board. So I have a few programs that are all based on this concept of the board, as Adam's laughing because I ran with this concept a couple of years ago. But I essentially created the concept of the board because I wanted to experience my own type of board of directors. So people that would be a stand for me, but that I could be a stand for them when it comes to leadership. And I have a board called the Circuit Board, which is starting on October 6th. And it's a 6-week consecutive program. And really my intention around that is to ignite connection inside of yourself. So one of the things I've noticed with a lot of my people is connection is shot coming out of the pandemic. It's really crap. And it's impacting things that like decision-making and being able to show up as a leader and being able to hear feedback and give feedback. And so I'm taking a couple of these concepts and coaching around them over a course of 6 weeks. And I've really made this program available for people who want to refine their leadership, but aren't quite sure about it. So it's 6 weeks. It's the lowest investment as far as, people being able to work with me. It's $1,000, which still, I want to preface, could be a lot of money for people. So if you are interested in it, DM me, have a conversation with me, or you can read about it all on the website. But I'm really excited about it. I really fundamentally believe right now, it's like you said, I do think that everyone is craving expression and ultimately connection. And particularly right now, coming out of the pandemic, this is a way to support people without having to wait till next year and to get your feet wet and see what that's like. So it's a group coaching environment. So that's my biggest project I'm up to right now. And then I run other boards, a board for mothers and a board for fathers, which I love. All the information's on my website, and those all kick off again in 2022. Is that right? 2022?
January? Is that when they start?
The board, the mother and father board will start, in Q1, so more like February. And then the board, which is for women executives, so I only run it once a year, it's 9 months, that will start in March. So all the information is there laid out. I would say if you're interested in having a conversation around possibility and what could be there for you, just hit me up over email through my website, and we'll find a time to connect.
Nice. Yeah, definitely follow Sarah. Oh, and you're leading
social.
In the Forge is the other thing that you're
and
up to.
I'm leading in the Forge, which is awesome. And if anyone is interested, we just kicked off the Forge, but if you're curious about it next year and want to hear more about, my own experience, happy to have a conversation. It's fantastic.
Definitely follow Sarah, what she creates, what she writes. I love your writing. It's awesome. You do a lot of, or at least what I get a lot of is like the parallels, the analogy between leadership and parenting. And a lot of your writing, I often take that away. So follow Sarah. She's up to a whole bunch of stuff and is really modeling transformation deeply, deeply into her work. And so if you're kind of like, sometimes we can be like, yeah, but does this stuff really, like, it sounds nice, just follow her and watch what happens over the course of a year. And you're going to see like, wow, this is a person that continually steps into their edge.
Yeah. Oh, and my social handle is Sarah Gibbons Co, both on
the Insta,
and on the Facebook and all of that.
Sarah Gibbons Co, all one word. Great. And I put your website in the comments here. Let me just see if there's anything I want to plug, and then I want to finish by acknowledging you. So, well, I'm going to plug the Forge. We've already talked about it at length, but the reason I want to do that is because we've already got quite a list of people that are interested, and I notice it fills up sooner and sooner and sooner every year. So if you'd like to have a conversation about what that's about, what might be possible for you, reach out. We would love, any of us would love to talk to you about it. As you can tell, we're very passionate, and at the heart of a lot of what I do is a stand I have for transformation and coaching and leadership. And that stand is that there is real magic available in this work, and that life can be tremendously rich and incredible, and that the coaching profession has some real like opportunity to offer, and we're not there yet. And so that's why we run programs like the Forge, is why Sarah does the work she does. All of us are really committed to create magnificent coaches, because we believe that changes the world for the better. And not just coaches as a profession, but as a way of being. So whether or not you intend to go and like do that as a profession, the ability to show up in these sort of ways transforms the world. So let us know if you'd like a conversation about that.
And the Forge does fill up quickly, because actually 4 years ago, I said,
I remember
hey, Bae, okay, I'm a yes. And she wrote back and said, you waited too long. It's fine.
I remember that. Yeah. And I remember Bae and I were like, we're sad Sarah won't be in there, but I think this is going to create a bit of a breakthrough for her, have her practice like taking steps sooner. And this year we turned, I think before we'd even finished the last Forge, maybe, I think we had to say, hey, to 3 people, it's already full. So we're sorry. So reach out, let us know. And check out Get Lit, my podcast on iTunes or wherever the stuff is. This conversation will be on there. All of these conversations go on there. And we have lots of cool little bites on leadership and stuff like that. Sarah, can I acknowledge you to finish up?
Sure, I'll take
cool.
it.
I get to do this every week with Sarah, but it's nice to do it in this forum too. Yeah. So there's a few things I would love to acknowledge you for. The first is I really love how much possibility you can see for yourself, your children, your husband, the world, your clients. And I acknowledge you for the courage and the love and the grace to be with all of the heartbreak that causes. Because if we can see what's possible, that is going to be in contrast to what is. And to be able to hold that in our hearts is going to necessitate a willingness to be with a degree of heartbreak. And I'm often in awe of your capacity and willingness to hold that rather than to collapse by crushing the possibility and resigning yourself and giving up on people, but also not to, and I know you're doing work in this, but not to like bulldoze people to get there. And I witness you do that and be in that challenging work over and over and over again, learning to have grace for yourself, forgiveness for like exactly where you are. And I really acknowledge you for being a warrior for love, really a committed stand in the world for loving what is, and at the same time, not giving up on what can be. Thanks for all the work you're doing. Thanks for everything that you bring into the Forge and the ways you serve Bae and I, and for being willing to be a masochist and have it be excruciating and all of those other parts too. You're magnificent.
Thank you, Adam. I receive all of that, and such a treat to be here. It's actually the first time I've been on a live with Adam's show, and so it's really fun to play with you and all those who joined and who watch, and really grateful for this opportunity.
All right, everyone. We love you. Have an amazing weekend. We'll see you soon.
Happy Friday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, now you stay here, Sarah. They're going to see this part, but you stay. I'm just going to end the live. Wait, how do I do that, though? I think I do it up here. There we go. Cool. We're off the live. How was that? Was it good?
Okay.
I'm talking to you now. Oh, okay. Well, you did that.